Okay, recording now. All right, so we're just gonna go over um, summarizing. Summarizing is really cool, especially with like polysite. It's just so basically it's just gonna be like we're grouping by some variable, grouping by unique, uh, the unique, observation values of some variable, and then we can summarize um, different variables by that group. Um, and it's really easy using dplyr. And then I'll also briefly go over um, separating and combining columns, and you'll see kind of how and when that tends to be useful. It's very often used with date stuff. So like if I have a column that's the month year, like month slash year, I can separate that out into a month and year column. Sometimes that's useful. I'll just go over that really quick. Um, that's not as big of a deal, and it's not used nearly as often as the grouping bit, but I think it's worth knowing. Then I'm going to make a video just kind of going over basic regression. It shouldn't be that tough because it's really easy to do with a computer. It's a lot easier. Um, and then I'll also send out the sort of what I want for the final project. I'll send that out probably today. So, and it won't be it won't be a lot to do. It'll just be kind of find your own data set and do the stuff we've been doing on other data sets, but just kind of making it one comprehensive thing to kind of just showcase everything that we've done. So, are there any questions about any of that? Okay, I'm gonna figure out how to share my screen the way I wanted to. Yeah. Okay. So we are going to do some stuff. So we're going to be using this RPC data set. I only vaguely know what this stuff is. It's country year data. So we have a bunch of, Afghanistan is on here a ton of times. Then, we have a ton of different countries. Actually, it'd probably be useful is to do a summary, which is often a good thing to do to get the lay of the land. So it looks like we have countries. That doesn't really tell us how many unique countries there are, but so we have the year column. It looks like the minimum is 1960, the max is 2013, so data from 1960 to 2013. And we can look at the length, not length, I could spell, and then use unique like I've used a couple times, and we can go RPC $ country. Oh no, I can't spell. Also, my computer's being kind of slow right now. Oh no, it's not. So yeah, it looks like we have 202 unique countries. So using these types of things is really cool. Maybe I should make a cheat sheet for these things. That'd probably be cool. I'm sure it already exists, but maybe I could make one that, I don't know. Because these are really good when you're just exploring data, but that's not the point here. The point here is, so we're doing kind of what we've done before, where we're making a new data frame by changing what's going on in the original data frame, which is RPC up here, right? And we're going to use a group by command. And what this does, let's just look at what this does by itself. It doesn't really, so we've only run the group by bit. We don't need to worry about the rest of this bit, right? So we're just going to run the group by bit, and we're going to check out. So it's changed nothing. It's just told R that we're going to group, because this is not distinguishable from the original data set, except for that it's grouped by the country column, right? So it's going to look at unique values of the country column, and it's going to use that as our group. So we'll have fact, I think there's a way to look at that. RPC. No? Okay, it doesn't tell me how many groups there are, but disregard that. So yeah, it's just grouping it by the countries. But then when we use the summarize command, we can make, I should have started with one maybe. Yeah, we'll start with one. And we'll also get rid of that. So within the summarize command, and these are sort of always used in tandem with each other because you group by, and in order to summarize by something, you need to have grouped it by something. So this is just an example. You can do a lot of different things with this summarize, but a really common way is just to make a mean, right? So we've grouped it by country. So then when we run that and we check this out, we have it each country, because before we had a bunch of Afghanistan across different times. So what we're doing here is looking at Afghanistan's mean GDP across those times. So the average value for this GDP column, this RPE GDP column over the years, because we've grouped it by country. We could similarly group it by year if we wanted to do that. Oh, but there are NAs, so I gotta, okay, so, what did I do before? Oh no. Yeah, so I use this and I was gonna explain it, but I kind of need to use it now. So I'm getting rid of, by adding this filter here, and we've used filter before, so we know what it does, hopefully. And the exclamation point means not, right? Remember that? Maybe. So what I'm telling it to do is to filter the values of mean GDP that are, so is.NA is the values that are NA, but I'm filtering it out so it's the ones that aren't not available, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Does this line 13 here make sense to everybody? So I'm saying I don't want the NA values. So if it is NA, or yeah, only if it's not NA, do I want to keep it? I'm filtering out the ones that are NA by doing that. Let's look at that. Yeah. And so that reduces the number of observations we have because a lot of the countries don't have a lot of the data. So that's fine. But yeah, so, and that actually, makes it look a lot nicer because we got rid of the countries that don't have the data. So this is the mean.
Hey, Zach.
Yeah, what's up?
Can you go back to the other screen real quick? So in line 13 where you say filter exclamation point is.NA,
Mm-hmm.
so just to clarify, that's filtering out everything that's not that to mean underscore GDP.
Yes. So we're filtering out values of mean GDP, which is the variable we just made. We're filtering out the values of that which are NA. We're
Okay.
saying I only want to keep it if it's not NA. So is NA, but is not, because we have that exclamation point. So I only want to keep them if they're not NA. And then we're assigning that summarization, so this variable, this new mean variable we made, grouped by country to the new object RPC GDP. RPC
Okay.
underscore GDP. Thank you for that. That's a good question. So like I was saying before, we can also do this by year. We just change what we're grouping by. Oh, just kidding. No data. Wow. Okay. Oh, man. Never mind. It didn't work. That's interesting. Why is that? Can I not group by year? Oh, it's because it doesn't exist. Maybe. Let me try this. Oh, just kidding. Oh, well, maybe if we do year equals as dot character. See, that works. Oh, interesting. Hmm. Oh, there we go. Oh, but that's NA. Hmm. Okay, there's something weird with this. This should work, but I think there's something weird that I didn't anticipate, which is on brand for me. So, point is, don't worry about it. It's fine. I just messed something up. But point is, you can group by stuff and summarize. So we can also add more than just the one variable. So let's add others. So if we go to the original data set, we see there's RPE agri, I'm presuming that's short for agriculture, RPE fed, which is probably some measure of federalism, I'm sure. So we can add those in by adding just additional arguments in the summarize. So we can make mean fed equals the mean, calling that mean function, the one that started everything. Pretty sure that was the first function I talked about. But and we could also add mean agri, mean RPE agri. Add those. Check that out. Yeah. So now we have a ton of these, ton of variables, and so you can maybe do some cool analysis with these numbers. And then so I also am going to add a number years, and we're using this n function. So if we look at the documentation for that really quick, yeah. So it gives the current group size, which is useful if you want to know how many. So I've grouped it by country, and because if we look back here, I don't want to go through and count all of these to make sure I have the same amount. So I can make that column with the n function, and then when I look at here, it tells me the number of years. It's not like, so this n function isn't telling me the number of years that are in the, it's just telling me how many groups there are, but I know that this is country year data where the repeated measures of country, or the repeated observations of country are because they vary by year, right? Does that make sense? So if this was like trial number, if we were doing like some psychology thing, right? And we had the same subject just over multiple trials, that I would make that trial number. So I'm calling this number of years in the context of the data set because I know the context of the data set. So we see it's pretty even. We have 54 for all of them, which is nice because then it's all the same. But I'm going to remove, so by doing this, I'm removing the first observation of RPC. And then when I do that code again, we see it's changed because I took out one of the, right? So it's just showing that how it changes. I think that makes sense, but any questions about that? Okay, cool. Okay, and now we're going to move on to this different data set because I wanted to use a different data set. So we've got this polity data. Pretty cool. So we look at the head of it. Just more ways to summarize things. There are a ton of different ways. And like I said, maybe I can make a cheat sheet. So then we look at the summary. We see, okay, we have 2014 to 2018. We've got these scores of polity, democracy, autocracy. Pretty neat. Um, so sometimes it's nice to have unique observations. So we're talking about this country year data, right? Where I've got, let's organize it by country. So I have Afghanistan. I've got 5 observations for Afghanistan. I've got 5 observations for Albania, Algeria, and so on, so on, so on, so on. Sometimes it's nice because I can't really call on a specific instance of Afghanistan, so 1 year, 1 observation of Afghanistan, without calling 2 things. It kind of has 2 reference points. That makes sense. Like substantively. So like if I were to be like, I want to, this year of Afghanistan, I have to call 2 columns. So sometimes that can be annoying. So sometimes we like to unite columns. Let me do that with here. So what this unite function does is takes 2 columns and I should put this in the beginning because I think that makes more sense to put it in the beginning. So first thing I do is tell it what columns I want to unite. So I'm taking polity and I'm overwriting it with this changed version of polity. I hope that this sort of syntax, kind of what I'm doing here, makes sense with the pipe operator. And if it doesn't, yell at me. So I'm taking the columns country through year because if we look at the polity data, okay, frick, I ran the code I shouldn't have. So if we look at the order of variables, country and then year, so I'm just saying country through year are the columns I want to combine, to unite. The col parameter is what I want the new column to be named. The sep parameter is what I want the 2 values of the 2 columns that I'm combining to be separated by, because I'm going to be combining. So like, for example, we look down here, I'm going to be combining Afghanistan in 2014, and I want them to be separated. I want the 2 values of those columns to be separated by something so I can delineate. And then I don't think that needs to be there. I think that was because a lot of some parameters have defaults. Oh, remove is set to true. Oh, okay. So I think that, wait, let me just look really quick. Oh, no, that's not that. Okay, yeah. So actually, I do want that because the remove parameter determines whether I want to remove the 2 columns that I'm combining. So by setting that to false, I'm combining these 2 columns and I'm also keeping those 2 columns. I'm not removing them. If this was set to true, so let's just see that. So, oh no. Oh, it's because I didn't run that right. Okay. Yeah. So now let's look at polity. So now we see country year, the new column I made, has Afghanistan 2014. And so now when I put it in order, I can call on just that, and I could maybe make a time series of Afghanistan over the years. I mean, I guess I could have maybe done that anyway, but it's just nice sometimes to have unique observations. So we have a country year column. So now, oh yeah, I have an example of this. So if we look at the length of the unique countries or the unique values of country, we see 168 because that's how many countries we have in the original data set. But if we look at the length of our new column, we see that we have 835 observations, which makes sense because so we have 835 unique observations that we can use. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to make a new version of polity where I get rid of the country and year column. I guess, you know what I could do? I could just set remove to true. That'd be really nice. Yeah, that works. So now Polity has just the country year. I got rid of the year column and the country column, right? Let's say I want those back, right? I'm going to get rid of the new here. If I wanted those back, I can also separate columns, right? And that's, yeah. So this is what we have now. We have the country year column, but I want the individual country and year column. Say this is how I got the data set. I think it'd be really nice if I had those separated. So that we use separate, the sort of function names kind of make sense for what they do. It's sort of intuitive. So unites two columns into one, separate separates. So I specify what column I want to separate into multiple columns. Then the sep, similar to up here, I say so what I'm doing there is saying I want one column to have the stuff that's on one side of some, in this case, it's an underscore. So if, look at the country year column, I want the stuff that's on one side of the underscore to be in one of the new columns, and I want the stuff on the other side of the underscore to be in the other column. Kind of going back to dates, and maybe that would have been a good example to show, or maybe I'll make a video or something, but is when you have like 11/15/99, right? That's the date you have, and you can separate into three columns, so you'd have it separated by the slashes or the dashes. So that's just another example of what you would put in for something for this sep, right? Because that would be a situation where you're turning it into three columns. But here we're just putting it into two because we just have the country and the year. So then into is specifying what I want the new columns to be named. So yeah, let's do that. So then we look at that. It's back where we started, but we kind of went through a couple steps to get there. And we were pretending that we got it with the country year column rather than the individual country and year column. Yeah. So does that make sense, everyone? All that stuff makes sense? Any questions?
Yeah. In terms of when you separate them, or I guess when you unite them and then you separate them, does it remove its knowledge about if it's like an integer or a character or like what it's coded as? Or what does it set as default? Just whatever R thinks it should be?
That's a good question. Let's check it out. So we can look at type of, because right, we just made that new year column. Yeah. So I think it's going to be a character by default. So if you wanted to make year back into an integer, you would need to change that. And you can do that with the $ notation or with mutate. If we're doing the tidyverse thing, mutate year equals as dot numeric year. As a review of how we could not find function polity. Oh, yeah, I didn't. Oh, I didn't mean to make that a pipe operator. There we go. Yeah. So then we do type of polity here. It's a double, which is a number. So yeah, just a reminder how we change stuff like that, how we change the variable type and how we check for that. Yeah. So yeah, and that makes sense that it would just default to a character. It does that with numbers a lot. So yeah, to answer the question, defaults to a character or to a string. Words. It interprets the numbers as words. So yeah, good question. Anything else? Okay, I'm gonna make a video. I think has Dr. Peterson talked about regression stuff in class? You guys have talked about it? Okay. Okay, so I just show you how to kind of do that in R. I have actually, I think is a pretty nice worksheet that I've already got for that. So I'll make a little explanatory variable once I get done with my Wednesday stats homework. But yeah, so I'll do that. And then I will also send out the sort of like assignment sheet, I guess, for the final project and kind of just what I'm looking for. It's not going to be a big deal. Not a lot of pressure. Let me know if you need help finding a data set, even if it's just like, hey, I kind of want something that's along the lines of this. Like I'm interested in something like this, even if it's really vague. We could talk about it or email. Yeah. Any last minute questions before we stop? Okay, cool. If you have any questions, email me. But yeah, I'm going to stop recording and have a great rest of your Wednesday.